Welcome back to another episode of Inside SFPS. My name is Cody Donarski, Public Information Officer with Santa Fe Public Schools. And today, I have a very special guest. Today, my guest is Mr. Chris Lopez, Principal at Gonzales Elementary. Mr. Lopez, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Hello.
I am very excited about this interview. I have to start the interview by saying go Bills. I know you are a Dolphins fan.
Yep.
How did you get to be a Dolphins fan?
Yeah. So growing up in Santa Fe, kind of a sports agnostic. I could pick and choose. There wasn't any particular rhyme or reason to the way I chose. All my family were Cowboys fans. So I grew up kind of watching the Cowboys, but I didn't really like their style. It was very Tom Landry, ground and pound. And that wasn't my style. So I started watching the AFC channel and watched the Dolphins sling it around and watch Dan Marino and the Marx brothers do their thing. And I fell in love with that style of football. So the Dolphins became my team, much to my dad's chagrin. And here I am now with a couple decades worth of pain.
Oh, hey, I'm a Bills fan. Trust me. You don't have to tell me about pain. I'm surprised hearing that with liking the style that you weren't a fan of like the K-Gun and the Jim Kelly.
Oh, those guys haunt my memories. watching Andre Reed and Thurman Thomas and Bruce Smith. So I made a rule, and it was because, when New England beat Miami, so the year that the Bears were the 86 Bears, Miami beat them. That was the Bears' only loss. So I was convinced Miami was going to win the Super Bowl. And New England beat Miami in the AFC Championship game. And I can't stand Steve Grogan. I can't stand Tony Eason, Andre Tippett. So I made a rule for myself then that I was going to root against any AFC team in the Super Bowl that wasn't the Dolphins. So when Kelly and the Bills and the Dolphins would play them every AFC playoff, and it would destroy me because I think, oh yeah, they have a chance this year, and 56-10 later they wouldn't have a chance. So I would root for the Giants, teams that I would never touch it during my regular times. I'd have to root for them because they were playing the Bills, and I would take extra joy when New England got beat by the Giants during their semi undefeated year. I cried just like I would if the Dolphins won the Super Bowl.
I'm only that way with Patriots. Like the Dolphins, I have no issue with. The Jets are just a lowly franchise that you just feel pity for. For the Patriots, and I remember I was living in Binghamton, and I had a buddy over who was a Giants fan, and we were watching the Patriots Falcons Super Bowl, and 28-3. Ugh. I'm sitting there at halftime and I'm grinning ear to ear. I'm like, oh, this is great. The Patriots are getting blown out of the building. This is like the greatest day of my life. This is the day the Patriots dynasty is crumbling, and anyone who watches football knows what happens next. And I just sat there and just stared at the TV blank because right when I thought it was all coming down, it was built right back up in about a quarter and a half.
At least their fans aren't smug about anything. Yeah, they're really down to earth and easy to deal with. So the whole AFC East is so the Monday Night Miracle with New York. That one just ripped my soul out too, even though it was rooting for Jay Fiedler, which that was not good times. And then I have my New England story, and the Bills are just the thorn in my side forever. So I just can't root for any other AFC East team ever under any circumstances.
Well, get ready. You're starting the season 0-2 already.
Yeah, I know. I'm stealing myself for it. However, I have hope.
I'm a fan. I love Brian Flores. I thought he was a fantastic coach. He was the one coach in the league that scared me because for whatever reason, I know Josh always plays well against the Dolphins, but Miami was just a tough team that never seemed to go away. And so I used to text my brother all the time, Brian Flores is going to kill us. And I thought he did well enough to continue going on. And I'm kind of glad that he's gone because I thought he was going to be good, but I love Mike Gesicki. I think he is very slept on. I think he is one of the better tight ends in the league that doesn't get enough credit. So I think you guys are good, 9-8 or whatever.
Just okay. Yeah, Mike Gesicki doesn't block. So that's a thorn in my side because they need a running game. It was Adam Gase that destroyed the Bills though. as hard as it is to say Brian Flores was not good against the Bills. So when Jimmy Johnson first arrived in Miami, I was so happy because he was the Bills killer. And
and it's kind of ironic because Sean McDermott, disciple of Jimmy Johnson, is the Bills coach now.
Yeah, no, Sean McDermott scares me. I thought, no, his defense is great all the time.
I'd be more afraid of Brandon Beane because of all the moves that he makes, and he just continues to find good players. I could do this forever.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the players that they have, but their scheme, it's good. It's good.
So we'll move on from sports for a little bit. I know that this is not what the podcast is typically about, but I had to give it to you a little bit. So you're from Santa Fe.
I am.
Did you go to Santa Fe Public Schools?
Yes, I was born and raised in Country Club Gardens, south side of Santa Fe. Back when Airport Road was truly just a long strip airport road, and went to Sweeney, originally called Sunset, I think, for my first 2 years there. And then was Sweeney, and I stayed at Sweeney through 6th grade, went to Capshaw and for middle school, and then Santa Fe High for my last 4 years of school. When
you were finishing up at Santa Fe High, did you know what you wanted to do when you left high school?
Kind of. Originally, I wanted to go into psychology. So when I was taking the PSAT, PACT, those types of things, I would check off psychology. And then my senior year, went through the whole senioritis thing, and I was in a yearbook class and kind of just trying to. I got good grades, and I was able to take some classes that I really didn't need to take. Yearbook was one of them. And the last half of yearbook, the last semester of yearbook, it really didn't need me to be there. So the teacher said, "Is there any community service you could do?" I was like, "Yeah, I could find something." My dad was a principal. He was a principal at Salazar Elementary at the time. And so I asked him, I said, "Hey, Dad, do you have something for me to do at your school?" And it was me and a few of my friends that were in that class. And he said, "Well, you could come and help the teachers. You could do some PE." I was like, "All right, we'll go do that." So it was kind of early in the morning, 8:00. And for those families that have seniors in their house, you probably know how hard it is to get a senior up.
Oh, my mom used to have to drag me out of bed. She would pull the covers off. Right. I would find, a towel in the corner to put on me as a blanket. Yeah, she had to drag me out. So eventually it ended up just being me going to these PE times, and I fell in love with it. It was awesome. It was fun playing with the kids. And so as I was deciding what to do as I moved forward, went to college, I was like, well, this wouldn't be a bad way to start out. And then as I progressed through my college times, I started reading more of the theory, and I had some ideas about what education should be. As I grew my knowledge and my understanding in college, I realized that I could really affect change, the change that I saw that I think our republic needed. And it started from the ground up. There's I think it's Stephen Adams quote, not Stephen Adams. It was one of the Adams of the Adams family that grew the nation. That education is affects eternity. Its reach is everlasting, and that really stuck with me. And so a typical trope of college papers is to start with the quote. Well, that one started many of my papers, but then I started reading Paulo Freire. He's from Brazil, a Portuguese last name that I can't pronounce well, and Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And that really spoke to me. Growing up where I grew up, seeing the stories that I saw at Sweeney and Capshaw and even Santa Fe High, education was truly needed to bring about change for particularly the disaffected and the people that society has let down. And there was a lot of theory that really spoke to me that I wanted to bring to my students. And I thought, wow, well, being a teacher really has an impact. So that's
what got me there.
So I take it, and I kind of have two questions that I hear here. One, did you grow up not wanting to be a teacher? Did it, because I know some people whose parents were educators, they either fall in line and they're like, I will be an educator too, I'll carry on, or they kind of move away from it and say, I don't want to be a teacher, I want to be something else. Did you have something similar? Were you kind of indifferent about it?
I liked hanging around with my dad. I liked being at the school. The school had a distinct smell and feel, particularly when there weren't students there, that really appealed to me. It just felt like these hallowed halls. Additionally, every school had a gym. So I'm a gym rat. I love basketball, just love it. So, my dad would go in and I'd be able to shoot baskets. And when I was in high school, my dad was the principal at Salazar, I would beg and plead to let me play there. And I had to make a deal with him that I would do the mopping of the gym after we played so that his janitors wouldn't be upset. So that feeling, I felt like school was home.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't indifference. It wasn't, I really, really want to do this. It wasn't, I definitely don't want to do this. It was more like, this is home. I feel at home here and I could totally do this. It wasn't until I started having what Paulo Ferretti calls conscientization, that the understanding that you are a subject to your world. You can make the change that you want to create, that I started to really think, well, not only is it my home, but I can make this a place for other people to feel like they are in control of their own destinies.
And I like that because it kind of referenced back to the other question that I had, was you had mentioned the stuff that you had seen happening here in Santa Fe at Sweeney, at Capshaw. Was your goal always to come back and give back, or did you want to come back to Santa Fe and give back to the community, or what was kind of your goal as you were moving through college?
Well, so it depended on the day that you would talk to me. But I always wanted to help. I wanted to. The more I grew to understand how lucky I was, because my dad was the first kid in his family to go to college. My mom didn't make it past 6th grade. And I grew up in a trailer. I didn't know that my family was poor, because everybody around me was in similar circumstances. I didn't realize what it meant to be a trailer park until I started broadening where I was in the city. I didn't know any of those things. That came to me as I started studying more. I was like, oh man, remembering stories about my classmates, and they would talk about things that had no reference point for me, not missing meals, not being able to buy clothes. Like that was I remember it, but in my mind, it was a very foreign concept, because my parents didn't exist for me. Even though my circumstances around me, that was prevalent, I never saw it in my own home. And I realized just how prevalent it was as I drew back from it. And then I remember there was one point in my life that I wanted to get to an Ivy League. I wanted to show all of the highfalutin people in the world that I thought were existing on high and thinking down on people from New Mexico, people from Santa Fe, people from a trailer park. I wanted to show them I could do that. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and she said, oh yeah, you could totally go. But what would be more impressive is if you got all your education here and then went to teach there and taught them about that. Because my initial goal, maybe still my goal as I grow up even more, is to teach at the university level. That's been something that I've always thought is my destiny, to be in that office full of books and just be locked in study. So that really stuck with me as I was talking to my mom. I was like, well, yeah, that would be kind of cool. So I guess that's a long way of answering that. I thought I need to give back to my home now that I understand what that means. And that's what brought me back. It brought me back with my then girlfriend, now wife. We were both from Santa Fe, and we thought that we wanted to raise a family here. We wanted to be near our parents. We wanted to be near our families. And the other more larger global issue for us in coming back was to give back to our hometown and show, for me, it was to show kids that were like me, that are in similar circumstances that I was, that, hey, you can do anything you want. The key is education. It really is the key.
I think that's so incredible. And that's a pretty unique story for what we've told on the podcast. You know, a lot of the people that we've had on the show so far have been transplants, you know, myself included. I come from Buffalo. You know, a lot of the other people that we've had are transplants or left at some point and then came back. But to have someone who really is sort of homegrown, you know, and then I think just because I see your degrees on the wall, you went to UNM for all of your degrees? Because I also see there's a
yeah. So, okay. My story in high school is kind of interesting. So freshman, sophomore, junior, I got great grades. Didn't really feel like I was challenged to my capabilities. I didn't feel like there was a teacher, and you know, now I have adult perspective.
Yeah.
But the kid perspective was there wasn't a teacher there that cared about me as a human being. They cared, like, in that I'm a student in their class and that I was there to do their work. But beyond that, I didn't think they knew even my full name. And that it was really hard for me as a senior to really get up the gumption to push myself hard.
Almost like a rebellious kind of, like you get into like that teenager rebellious. And I think you'd probably be able to say this now in an adult perspective. And I can totally say I was the same way, especially when you're 18, you think you know everything in this world.
Right.
You think that all the adults don't know what they're talking about and that no one, you know, can really step foot to you because, you know, I know everything. And that's
correct.
I think that's just being a 17, 18-year-old
right.
senior.
Yep.
And that just kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah. So I was doing okay, but I would not.
You're giving a smaller percentage than 100.
Right. Yeah. I was not doing as well as I should have been doing. And my parents were like, you're a senior. It's on you. Sorry. Yeah. There's, you know, what we expect of you. The expectation in my house was that I would always go to college. That was an expectation. My parents would tell me two things. We can't afford for you to go to college. You're in charge of getting yourself there and paying for it. But the expectation is that you go to college. And that was it. There was no questions asked. That was what was going to happen. So I remember getting my first report card that really made me go, ooh, this is not good. And I hid it in my locker. And then I forgot the combination to that locker. So I was never going to see that again. And I remember that distinctly because that was the first time I hid my grades from my parents. And they knew that I wasn't doing so hot, but they also knew that I was going to take care of it. It would just take me some time. So I was convinced I was going to go to St. Mary's in San Antonio, just convinced, and got accepted. That your report cards matter all the way through, but that senior year report card, once you're applied and decisions are made, you're in. So I had been accepted to St. Mary's. St. Mary's then calls me the summer of my senior year and says, okay, we're expecting you. Here's your bill. And that caught me flat-footed. Again, the expectation was I was going to pay for it. There was no way for me to pay for that. So I was floundering, didn't know what I was going to do. Ended up at the community college for a year, trying to figure myself out. In the meantime, I was still getting notifications from in-state schools. UNM contacted me. Eastern contacted me. So Eastern, I just thought, well, I mean, there were two schools of thought. One, that's a Division II school. I can try out, see if I can make that team. And UNM's huge. So I went to Eastern, and it was pretty much paid for, which was nice. I could pay for the rest. I could do work study for the rest. So I went to Eastern and met the professor that changed my life, Dr. Elder. He was beginning his time at Eastern the same time I was beginning my time at Eastern. And I remember him saying, I do anything for my students. I will do anything for my students. If you ever need me, come and talk to me. I'm brand new to Portales too. Let's figure this out together. And I thought, it's just somebody being nice. My junior year at Eastern, I had 3 semesters left. I get notified from the College of Education that I am missing a class, and therefore my classification might change, which would also affect my scholarships. I was freaking out. I didn't know what to do. And I remembered what Dr. Elder said, and I went to Dr. Elder. He arranged it. He made everything right. And from that moment on, as in my educational journey, I knew that I could never pay him back for that. And I remembered what he said that first day. And I said I was going to do that for my students. So in asking me about my educational journey, it started at Eastern, which turned out to be the greatest decision in my life that I've ever made. I am so happy I chose Eastern. I was in the classroom for a year and a half, and I was approached there was a master's program starting at UNM, and asked if I would be willing to do it. And I said, sure. So I got my master's at UNM. And then the wild hair is I was teaching at Chaparral. I was the technology teacher at Chaparral.
The one that's here in Santa Fe.
The one that's here in Santa Fe. So my teaching jobs were student taught at Sweeney. So it was a full circle thing. Got a second grade job at Chaparral, which if you talk to any of my middle school students, there's no way that they would think that I was a second grade teacher. And I can't believe I survived that either. A fourth grade teacher for 2 years at Chaparral, and then went back to Sweeney as a grant coordinator, and then came back to Chaparral as a tech teacher.
Interesting. So you've kind of gone like almost a full spectrum,
right,
in the younger grades.
Right. So I kept hearing that's against the law. You can't do that. That's against the law. You can't do that within the field of education. I was like, how can so many things be against the law? That doesn't make any sense. And so I'm inquisitive by nature, started thinking, well, I want to know what the law says. Ended up talking to my wife, Jen. I was like, hey, what do you think about me going to law school? She was like, well, that would be interesting because we're about to start our family. She was pregnant with my daughter at the time, my firstborn daughter, who's now a junior. I said, well, what do you think? And she said, well, you can apply. Let's see what happens when you apply. So I took the LSAT. My wife and my daughter was up all night with croup, and went to the LSAT with my preparation was staying up all night and watching a movie beforehand. I didn't prepare at all. Kids don't do that. Always prepare. Went to Glory Road was the movie's name. I tried getting into the LSAT books. I tried. I just couldn't do it. And I couldn't stomach paying somebody to study for or do that. So I did the LSAT, applied to UNM, thought, there's no way. With that preparation, there is no way. Applied to UNM, sure enough, class of 2009, law school class of 2009. I was like, okay, let's give this a shot. So I went to law school. So it's normally a 3-year process, finished in 2.5 years, not because I was a fantastic law school person. It was, I needed to start earning money for our family. And we were about to have another kid, which is my 8th grade daughter. And I finished law school. And this is the story in the district, right? Is I went around to my interviews, put on that suit, and was like, ugh, this is awful. I cannot wear a suit I cannot stomach wearing a suit, cannot stomach wearing a tie. I can't do this. Ran into Carl Morano at just out and about. And at the time, he was the student engagement advisor here at Gonzales. And he was like, hey, what are you up to? And I told him the story. And he said, any interest in becoming a middle school teacher? I was like, no, there's no interest in me being a middle school teacher at all. And so we left it at that. He was like, if you ever change your mind, come see me. So went to those interviews, couldn't stomach it. My student loans were coming due. I needed a job. I went to a teacher fair for summer employment. Ran into Carl again, and he hired me for a summer school teacher at Remedios Thomas, but helping students from Ortiz. And so middle school students. And I went and I started. The way that my classroom runs is very, I remember one of my professors at Eastern, his name's Dr. Shaughnessy, and my wife and I always joke because we had Dr. Shaughnessy at the same time. And basically his scenarios are law school scenarios. You have a kid with 3 heads and 1.5 hands, and all the materials that you have in your classroom are paper towels and 3 pencils. What do you do? And he would give you that. And you'd be like, oh, I don't know. What do I do, Dr. Shaughnessy? He's like, no, you got to figure that out, because you never know what's going to be in your classroom, and you never know the types of scenarios you're going to have to deal with. So my classrooms were always built on projects, because I could do the projects with minimal amounts of materials, minimal amounts of supplies, and always my curriculum was always the standards. And so my principals mostly knew it, but it was a very much, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not using the textbook. If you walk in, they will be present, but I'm going to be building my curriculum from the standards using the supplies that I have on hand. So Carl knew this. We get into summer school, and my project that year, because it fit all the standards within the summer school, was to build games. And I had a student, his name was Fernando, and he was one of my favorite students of all time. And he built this game that was intense. It was so good, but he didn't like school all that much, but he built this game, and he told me how great it was for him to finally have a teacher that listened to him and let him build and create. And he was coming to Gonzales. I knew he was coming to Gonzales. I was like, this is not bad, not at all what I expected from middle school, because you hear horror stories. My in-laws were middle school teachers, and they would tell me stories, and I was like, wow, these don't match up. And I talked to Carl again, and he was like, yeah, you should give it a shot. I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. So I became the 7th, 8th grade middle school teacher here, the second year that Gonzales was a K-8. So it was their first promoting 8th grade class that I started teaching. And that was 2000. I think the promotion was 2010. So I started in 2009 here, and the promotion was in 2010. And I fell in love with it. That was everything that I had studied for, all the theories coming together. Because middle schoolers, what I always tell people is middle schoolers are the rawest people on earth. They will tell you exactly how they feel at all times. You got to be tough, which the law school training kind of prepared me for. I think I was called worse names as a lawyer than I was as a middle school teacher. Yeah,
I think middle schoolers find your biggest insecurities that you don't even know you're insecure about, and point them out to the point where you go, oh, wait, I'm insecure about that part of me. Right. And you become very aware. It's always interesting to hear that, because I don't come from an education background, and I just think I would not want to deal with 7th or 8th grade me. Why would I want to deal with 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 of me at that age? But so many people that I talk to say that middle school was some of their favorite grades to teach. To me, that is just fascinating.
They remind you of who you are, where you came from, and why you're doing this every day. You're going to run the gamut of emotions. You're going to laugh. You're going to cry. You're going to be somewhere in between, and it's going to be all because of your dealings with the students. And they're amazing. The things they come, I know this is not a visual medium, but as you look around, all the artwork that's in here is student artwork. They are creative. They are thoughtful. They can be rude and mean and all the negative things that you may associate with being a middle schooler, because their bodies are just out of control. Their minds are out of control, but they are all of that. But they are so human and so uniquely human in that they allow themselves to still feel. They feel everything, and they'll tell you how they're feeling. And you can talk to them. You can joke with them. You can give them, you can give them the talk that you always wanted to have somebody give you. Look, I love you to death, but you're killing me. That you're making decisions that just aren't good for you in the long run. Ultimately, these are your decisions. They're not going to affect me. They're going to affect you in your life. And they hear you for the most part. Sometimes they ignore it. Later on, one of my favorite things is watching our students come back and talk to me and just hearing what they're doing. And it runs the whole gamut. I'm in college studying this. I've had so many come to me and say they want to be a lawyer. I'm like, hey, are you sure? And they tell me, well, it was your class, because we would do mock trials in moot court.
I've never heard someone become a teacher, get curious about law, mess around and go to law school without preparing for the LSAT, get into law school, become a lawyer, then decide I don't want to be a lawyer, not because of the work or because of the stuff that you do or anything like that, but because you couldn't wear a suit, which is true, because the only time I saw you wear a suit was for an interview we did about a week ago.
Correct.
Every other time you're in fancy dress shirts, which I appreciate because I always try and wear fun dress shirts as well, and then come back to be a teacher. That might be the most wild roller coaster ride of a career that I've maybe heard so far.
That's what I hear from all the people that come and talk to me, my law school friends, the people that lost the journey somewhere around that time. They look at me like I'm crazy, but that middle school job, just like the Eastern portion of my arc, the middle school job changed my life. I'm forever in debt to Carl. He's
that's the last thing Carl needs to hear. Oh my God.
He's, as you know, he's very convincing, and he convinced me. He got me here. And Mr. Lee, working with Mike, that was a really influential part of my arc, my thought, my career and thinking arc. Mr. Lee taught me a lot. He really taught me how to not be so harsh. When I initially started, this is the way I'm supposed to be, and this is the way it's supposed to be. And he really helped me acknowledge the humanity of our students. And they're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall down. You pick them back up and you love them the way they are, because our school might be the safest place they're at during their day, might be the best place they're at during the day. And you got to be that for them. And you can have a lot of expectations, but love them for who they are. And that sticks with me as well. During my master's program, I had a professor who said she studied students or youngsters during the Holocaust. And one of the things that stuck with her in her studies is interviewers would later ask the survivors, how'd you make it? How'd you do it? And a not insignificant amount of them said, I once had a teacher who treated me well. And they would think of that person along with their family, and that would help them. And that stuck with me too. It's like, I have to be the person that treats them well. And no matter what they do, they're human. I got to be that person, because they may not have somebody else.
That is making me emotional, because I think everyone can relate to that in some way, shape, or form, because we've all been to school at some point. We have all had teachers at some point in our life. And, I come from a very well-off town. Like I am one of the lucky ones that didn't really struggle throughout my life. Like, I had great parents who, provided everything for me. But moving to New Mexico has opened my eyes to how lucky I have been in my life, and that a lot of the things that I took for granted throughout my life, I shouldn't, because there are kids who come to school and the only meal that they get is the breakfast that we provide for them. And that the only person who doesn't yell at them is the teacher that they see every day. And that the other meal that they have is the only one that they get at school. And so hearing that it shows how powerful a teacher is, a school is for kids. I normally ask our guests what the best piece of advice they have ever been given, but I don't think you can give a better piece of advice than that.
Thank you. I love our kids. I love the kids of Santa Fe. I'm partial to our Gonzales kids just because I consider them mine. I think we have so much potential here, and I want to show through my journey that you can realize that potential. No matter your circumstances, no matter where you started, you can end up where you want to end up. And it's not, the Horatio Alger myth. It's not you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Hard work goes far, but education takes you farther. And that's what I want to instill in our kids. It's I can help you. I'll pick you up when you can't go anymore. But I need you to work because this is the best thing for you. This will help you when Mr. Lopez isn't here anymore, when your Gonzales is long in your rearview mirror. You can always go back to your education and you can say, I can do this because Gonzales believed in me. A teacher believed in me. In this case, it was me, but I can do this, whatever it is. And just that, I'm hoping that message gets through to them. And for the students that have come back to me, I think it has, but I'm just hoping. And I hope they always know that I will be their champion, that they can come to me. They need a reference for anything. They can come to me. We can talk. We can just work through life. It's the Dr. Elder experience. I can never pay that back, but I can pay it forward. And maybe somebody in my journey who I've affected in such a way will also pay that forward. And that's the gift of education, is you'll always have that person that you said, they helped me, now I can help the next in line.